Hi everyone and welcome back to Story of the World Highlights. Right now we're going to look at Chapter 7. So in Chapter 7 we had two major things happening, but both of them connected to slave trade and what was happening in Africa. So to start off, we're looking at Jamestown. So as you remember, Jamestown was the first English colony in the New World. And Jamestown unfortunately wasn't doing too well. And so they did start to grow a few different things that were local to the region, such as this plant called tobacco. And tobacco were different leaves that could be dried and made into a thing you can smoke. So like cigarettes, tobacco. And the tobacco that they grew in Europe was not very good. Not everyone really liked it. But this new tobacco plant and seed that they found in South America when the colonists came over and kind of spread towards North America, this tobacco was really popular. And so people in Jamestown started to grow and sell this tobacco to Europe. Now, everyone in Europe loved it so much that there was a high demand. Everyone wanted it. And they had to create more and more of it. But unfortunately, it's really exhausting and takes a lot of time to make tobacco. And so they realized, the colonists, that they could not do this all by themselves. As they were struggling with this, the Dutch, who were trading in many things, had decided, okay, I know what we can do for you. And the Dutch came over to the people in Virginia and said, we have been to Africa and we have collected all of these slaves, these war prisoners who were being punished and captured in their country. They were given to us, and we are going to sell them to you. So let's look at this map. So here, tobacco popular. Europe loved this new tobacco. We need more. Hard work. So here's the Dutch to the rescue. Slaves for money, and then they can grow the tobacco. And the colonists said, ooh, they can grow it? That means we can grow it faster, and we don't have to pay them. So cheaper. And they said, yes, we want slaves. Give them to us. And so now there was a big demand for slave labor in North America to make this tobacco and other plants that were growing really popular at the time, such as cotton, which is used to make cotton shirts and clothing materials. Now, the Dutch were not only trading slaves, war prisoners, and people they captured in West Africa. They weren't trading them just to North America. They were trading them down to South America too. And so as they would trade people oftentimes for unique products of that area, whether that be animals or spices or food, and then they would give them slaves. So they weren't necessarily just trading with money. They were trading with products that they could sell back home in Europe for a lot of money because they're unique foreign products. Now, this constant trading back and forth between West Africa, South America, and the New World in North America became known as triangular trade. Now, triangular trade, again, we're trading food, spices, animals, people. And this became really big and actually influences a lot of the things in our world today. A lot of products that we have in different countries or that grow in different countries happen because of triangular trade. And so while triangular trade had a lot to do with prisoners and slaves, it also had to do with other products such as animals and spices and how they came to be in other places that they were not naturally grown in. So that's the first part of the chapter. The second part of the chapter is specifically in Africa, and that is how slave trade sort of began. And so the slave trade began with the Portuguese going to Africa. And remember, Portugal is right next to Spain, tiny little country. And these Portuguese people had realized that they can take these prisoners of war and they can take them and sell them to Europeans or to people in the New World and make lots of money. So the Portuguese considered Africa to just be this endless supply of slaves to get them rich. And that they did get, very rich indeed. And at the time, there was this country called Nomba, and at the time, the young princess Njinga had just watched these Portuguese men always coming to her country and offering all these things and wanting slaves in return. She didn't know where these people went, but she didn't like it. And her father at the time also was a little suspicious and didn't trust these Portuguese and what they were doing with these people. But at the same time, he was afraid that the Portuguese might try to start a war and take over the country, so he didn't say anything. Later on, when Nzinga's father, the king, had died, Nzinga's brother took the throne. Now, Portugal saw this as an opportunity to try and take over Numba. And when he did that, he unfortunately lost. The Portuguese lost. And they decided to have peace negotiations. And to have peace negotiations, Nzinga's brother was too scared to go, so he sent her to go and speak with the people in Portugal. Now, the king, when he finally met with her, he was so disrespectful to her. He sat in this beautiful throne, super shiny, lots of gems, and he just took a cushion and tossed it on the floor at her feet and said, "You can sit there." How rude. And Nzinga saw this, and when you're having peace negotiations, it's not good to look weak. If you want to have successful negotiations, you need to look equal or stronger. And so she did not take that cushion. Instead, she looked at one of her maids that was with her, told her to sit down on the ground on her hands and knees, and then Nzinga sat on her maid, and it was like a human throne. And she sat there and she looked the king eye to eye and had negotiations. And the king ended up letting her live in Ndomba with peace and no fighting while they ruled. And she did die later in life. Unfortunately, the Portuguese did go in and take over the country, and they controlled the country for over 300 years and finally left the country in 1975, not that long ago. So this is a little bit of what was going on with the way the Europeans saw African leaders and African countries, and how little respect they had for them and saw them just as a means of free labor for money. This is going to be a problem that continues on in our stories. So keep paying attention and remember how it started. Bye-bye.